This is Will Aubrey. Welcome to this edition of the Improbability Engine, and I'm joined here by my buddy Joe Darnell. And Joe, maybe we should explain to people what the title's about.
Well, it is a hat tip to a classic work of science fiction, one that has kind of entered into common parlance in some circles. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Many of you might have seen the movie, which was actually really good.
It was awesome. The thing about that movie, though, was I watched it in the movie theater here in Murray with my wife, and I'm just dying laughing, and she goes, "Shh, no one else is laughing."
Because they haven't read the book. But if you get a chance, check out Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's a fantastic book. It's fun. It's lighthearted. It's it is a wonderful satire of how things work and how people think and how they operate, and
it satirizes just about every aspect of modern life.
Everything. I mean, it's good satire is a looking glass on society, and it's really good satire. Fantastic. But the improbability drive is the method by which they move quickly from place to place, much like the warp drive in Star Trek, or name any other kind of science fiction kind of esoterica. But its basis is that it has a 1 in however many chance of turning things into petunias or
something else.
And
like 9 times out of 10, you'll get to the right place in the right condition. But the 10th time, God knows where you're going to wind up.
Right, or as what? And so, we've kind of, as a hat tip, chosen the Improbability Engine as the basis for moving things into that direction. And I like it, personally. I think it's a fantastic name. So, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. That's just, you're going to have to suck it up. Read the book. Enjoy it.
Yeah. And it's time for our moment of what. I'm going to let you go first.
Okay, so this came up this week, and it I had to just stop and go, what? Ben Carson declines a role in the Trump administration because he, quote, feels he has no government experience. Up until a few months ago, this was the guy who was running for president, which last time I checked was a government role. What? How does that work? How do you say, no, I don't want a job in government, I don't have any government experience? You were running for president, and the fact that you didn't have government experience was considered an asset. That was what you ran with. How does that work, Will? How do people think about it? I mean, it's asinine. It doesn't make any sense.
It truly does not make a lot of sense.
What kind of cognitive dissonance do you have to have in your own life where you say, I'm going to run for president? Well, you didn't win president. How about Secretary of State? No, I've got no government experience. I'm unqualified for that position. But you were qualified for president. Okay.
I got you. Well, my moment of what, and hopefully it's not the same one that I used last week. If it is, you'll stop me, and I'll come up with something else.
Is it the bread fight?
And delete this.
Okay.
No, it is not the bread fight.
Okay, then you're good.
Okay, all right. I was talking to my friend Becky, and we're talking on the phone, and she's looking for her glasses. And I hear her daughter say in the background, "You mean the ones on your face?" And of course, I laughed, and I thought it was hilarious. And then when I got off the phone, my wife Marilyn turned to me and said, "You've done that."
Yeah. The worst is whenever you're on the phone with somebody and you're like, I cannot find my phone anywhere. I can't find it, and they don't notice it either. They're like, "Well, have you looked in your purse? Where would it? Did you leave it in your car? Is it? You know what I mean?" You're like, no, it's next to my head. I'm talking to you on it right now. So those things happen. I don't blame Becky for that one.
All right, let's talk about Racer sports.
Good deal.
Murray State's men's basketball team is 2-3 at this point, and they went up to Bowling Green, played in that tournament up there. They won 1 out of 3. I'm not exactly sure how to generally look at the way they've played so far. On the one hand, they've looked really good at times. On the other hand, they've looked really bad at other times. And it's just kind of difficult to assimilate. One thing I know, Jonathan Stark's the best player on the team.
Yeah, absolutely. But now here's the problem that they're going to face. They've got 6 newcomers on the team, and they're all seeing some serious minutes as of right now. It's going to be tough.
You okay?
We're okay.
We're good. Thank you. You know, but you look at that, you've got to be consistent. You've got to have some consistency on the defensive end, and right now they're not doing it. I mean, this is a team that's scoring 70 or 80 points a game.
Yes, but they give up. Yes, they're giving up just untold numbers of wide open threes.
Absolutely.
And you just can't get away with that.
And the way the rules are set up now, they don't want you to hedge out on a screen. They don't want you to do that. They don't want any contact on the outside. You've got to play better on the defensive end, otherwise they're going to call fouls.
But 40 years ago, people didn't hedge screens the way they do today. They did one of 2 other things. Actually, you could sort of call it one of 3 other things. Either they would switch on all screens. Denny Crum did that when he was at the University of Louisville. They switched on every screen. And he generally recruited big guards who were in the neighborhood of 6'4",
right,
so that they could guard multiple. Yes, they could guard multiple positions. Or if you weren't going to switch on every screen, then you would either go over or under screens.
Right.
Okay? And those are options too. And the third way, which is what I usually did, but is marginally illegal, is you just reach out and kind of shove the screener aside.
Marginally might be an understatement, but I got what you're saying. No,
but they didn't usually call that foul.
It's a different situation. And here's the one thing I know. If you think the whistles are inconsistent now, wait until you get to the Ohio Valley Conference play. Because the referees in the Ohio Valley Conference are the most inconsistent people in the history of the world.
It's like the improbability drive.
That's what they are. You want to talk about, I've watched games, and I know that you have too, where games are physical, they're tough, they're brutal at times, and there's very few whistles. And then you get into conference, and you get what seem to be anticipatory whistles, where there's no contact at all, but there could have been contact, and so the whistles blow. And we've seen that for years. The problem is going to be for this team, it's tough for consistent teams to do well in the Ohio Valley Conference. In a game-by-game situation, it's tough. It's a gauntlet. There are a lot of good teams that are overlooked. You go on a lot of long road trips to a lot of really hostile gyms. It's tough. It's hard to win in the OVC. Do I think that Louisville or Kentucky would struggle against OVC teams? No, but I think if they actually went on road games to some of these places, it would be more difficult. Look no further than Fort Wayne taking on Indiana last night. The Mastodons of Indiana University Fort Wayne had a home game against a top 5 Indiana Hoosiers basketball team.
And kudos to Tom Crean for playing there.
You know what? Tom Crean, he gets 10 bonus points in my book. Now, for those of you who don't know the Joe Darnold bonus points, they're like points in Whose Line Is It Anyway? They're all made up and they're probably worthless, but I'm giving them to him anyway. That is a dangerous game, and he took it, and nobody else takes it. Look how many true out-of-conference road games Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, all of those teams, they don't play on the road.
That's right.
They just don't. They'll wait until they're in conference, and even then, they're playing at Auburn in an empty gym, or they're playing someplace where nobody cares. It is not the same day.
But back to the racers.
Yeah.
Jonathan Stark's averaging over 20 points a game.
Yeah.
He's shooting the ball well. He's maybe even better than what I thought he was going to be. DeMarcus Croker has been pretty good.
Yeah.
He's shooting 36% from three-point range, which is pretty good, and his athleticism has been on display more than once, so he's done well. Bryce Jones needs to play a little better. Now, the last two games, Bryce, especially the last game, Bryce played well.
Right.
He had 10 assists, 4 turnovers, and he had 16 points. He was 3 of 6 from three-point range. He needs to be more like that on a consistent basis.
Agreed.
Terrell Miller's been kind of up and down, but you know when he plays well what you're going to get from him.
He's a high-level player.
Now, I think the other position is in question right now. Breon Sanchez has not been productive. And
Jalen Dupree has not been productive.
And, Gilbert Thomas has been productive at times. At other times, not so much. But I at this point, I think it's up in the air which one of those three is going to wind up starting in late January or early February.
Agreed. And not all of this was unexpected. You're dealing with freshmen, with JUCO transfers. Even the best junior college transfers go through a tough transition period coming to D1. I mean, it just happens. You look at Jonathan Farrell and Jarvis Williams, two of the best JUCO transfers that I can think of in a long time. They had that transition semester where there were a lot of fouls called. You saw the talent, but the game was too quick for them. They didn't have their feet underneath them yet. Now, the second semester, things started to settle. They started to play better. And I think you'll see that with some of these guys. Same thing with the freshmen. These are guys who are 18, 19 years old, first year in college basketball. The transition is huge. And the thing where we're deficient isn't on the offensive end, it's only on the defensive end. I mean, if you score 75 points a game in college, you should win a lot of games. Your offense is plenty good.
That's true.
But you've got to keep people from scoring 90. That's the trick that this team hasn't gotten yet. And I think it starts with perimeter defense. Too many guys driving past guys, too many reaching fouls, too many fouled jump shooters trying to recover. And you just can't do that and expect to win.
Now, you talked about officiating a little earlier.
Yeah.
Fans really complain about officials. They're getting a delivery here, and I'm getting a delivery today, and the last delivery I got was stolen, so it attracted my attention here at Poly.
And somebody has a case of club soda with your name on it.
Well, that's I'm looking at it, and I'm like, that could be mine. But anyway, there are a lot of situations where, and I don't know if it's because of announcers on TV or what the reason is, but where a lot of fans just do not know the rules. I mean, for example, on the block charge thing, okay? The defender is entitled to move, okay?
Right.
He can move straight back. He can move side to side. He does not have to be stationary. He's entitled to his position. And if there's contact in that situation, you can't say, well, the foul's on the defender because he was moving. He's allowed to move.
Well,
the best way to determine whether it's a block or a charge is, where's the contact? If the contact is in the chest of the defender, that's an offensive foul.
Yeah.
If it's in the shoulder of the defender, that's a defensive foul because he clearly didn't have position. If it's in the chest, he clearly had position.
Right.
Another area where I see people freak out for no good reason is somebody will catch a pass, and then before making their first dribble, they take a step forward. Then they dribble. And the thing is, after taking a full step, when they then reach forward to dribble, the back foot comes off the ground before the ball hits the floor. That's traveling. You can't do that.
Right.
Almost every time they take a step before they dribble, it's going to be a travel. So people shouldn't be stunned when that's called.
Yeah, the big issue I think with officiating is the rules change every year now.
That's true.
They have changed the block charge call at least 3 times in the past decade. And to the detriment of the game, I think. to the point where quit meddling. Just let it be for a little bit. Because you've got whole generations of people who, when they watched and played basketball when they were kids, that wouldn't have been a foul. That wouldn't have been a travel. That wouldn't have been the Euro step. How much trouble was caused by the Euro step? How can you do that? That's illegal. No. It is a unique interpretation of the rule that allows you not to take a step forward, but to take a step to the side.
Right.
It doesn't say you have to take a step towards the basket,
right.
Otherwise it's a travel. And it comes
for that matter, the step could be backwards.
Absolutely. It could be a step back, one-footed jumper. You could do that, and there are guys that do. Especially, I think of the small guy, the guard at Eastern Illinois, who is fantastic at making space by pushing the ball forward and stepping back. But that, you just look at those guys and you go, okay, yeah, that's how you do it. The rules need to quit changing. They need to quit screwing with it because people can't keep up.
That's true. That's very true.
All right, I'm going to get on the soapbox for a minute, and I wrote this down. I want everybody to know. Recently, there's been a little bit of a crossover between politics and sports, and this is kind of our area, so I wanted to make sure to talk about this. With the recent firing of German-born Jurgen Klinsmann as the head coach and technical director of United States Soccer, and after a terrible start to World Cup qualifying, the U.S. Soccer Federation has turned to a former U.S. men's national team head coach and current L.A. Galaxy coach Bruce Arena. Arena, himself a vocal critic of Klinsmann, recently joined acclaimed former women's player Abby Wambach in questioning the inclusion of foreign-born players on the U.S. men's national team. In a hat tip to Spiro Agnew, these nattering nabobs of nativism find themselves in the same boat. For better or for worse, as many of those who support many of the anti-immigrant, anti-foreign policies of President-elect Trump. In both cases, not only is this against the spirit of this great country, but actively makes America less great and less competitive. Okay, on the current U.S. men's national team roster, 7 of the 26 players called into camp were born outside of the United States. Further, 10 players on that roster are what FIFA calls dual nationals, guys who could choose between the nationalities of their parents or their grandparents even. Totally legal under current FIFA rules. And they could choose a different country if they desired to do so. Aaron Johansson was born in Alabama to Icelandic parents. He could have chose to play for Iceland. He didn't. He chose to play for the United States. And this is not an isolated thing. This is something that actually has an effect on their careers. Not only are they putting their life and limb on the line to play for the U.S. in a game, because that can affect how much money they make if they get injured. They don't sign a contract. They can no longer play. They do that every time. But because they're Americans and not with a European passport, it's harder to get positions on European clubs that pay the most money. So doing this is a sacrifice they're doing to don the red, white, and blue. That's a very powerful thing to do. So this is the same thing that immigration is as a whole in this country. Okay, so many risk all that they have just for the chance to be Americans, including their lives. And yet they're vilified as lazy or rapists at worst, although statistics show that they're neither. They work longer hours and work harder than most native-born Americans, and they don't commit many crimes.
Yeah, there's a lower crime rate among them.
Exactly. So, which goes in the face of what that thing is. So, and then at best, they're called not American enough. They'll never be American enough. So, never mind what many players call in the U.S. men's national team the sons of U.S. servicemen or even American missionaries. William Yarborough's parents were Mormon missionaries in Mexico. William was born in Mexico. He is a Mexican citizen. He plays professionally in Mexico. He chose to play for his parents' country, the United States. That's his choice. He chose the U.S. He could have gone anywhere and done anything. He could play and not play. It doesn't matter. But he chose to suit up for the U.S., and that's a very powerful choice. Yet there are people who are going to still say it's not American enough. So for those people, I want you to listen. In her poem, The New Colossus, Emma Lazarus wrote these words. Keep ancient lands your storied pomp, cries she, with silent lips give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.
She's not saying send us your best.
No, she's saying send us whomever. Send us, you're homeless, you're poor, you're tired. And if you think you may have heard that before, you probably have, because an excerpt is engraved into the tablet held by the Statue of Liberty. And this iconic symbol of America herself shares much with those who are on the current roster of the United States men's national team. She was also born in a foreign land, but is now American. The difference that should be noted by Trump and Arena et al. Is that there is no litmus test for embodying what it means to be an American. And it's a good thing, too, or I fear there would be many born in this country who would fail.
And you have Americans who go and play for other countries.
Absolutely.
Becky Hammon is a great example of that. I was a Becky Hammon fan. I thought she should have been on the U.S. national women's basketball team. They even put her on the team. She went to play for Russia.
Yeah.
Now, there were people who were angry about that, but hey, if the United States team didn't want Becky, there's no reason why she shouldn't be able to go play for Russia.
And as it comes to soccer, there was a young striker from New Jersey who was first or second generation Italian American who went to play for Italy. He chose Italy over the United States. That was his choice. It was his dream growing up, was to play for the Azzurri, the Italian national team. His grandparents talked to him about it. They listened to it on the radio. He learned Italian so he could listen to them play. Are you telling me that he's not Italian enough? You know what I mean? This idea of you have to be, only we can define what's American and what's not American. It's ludicrous. It is a dumb concept, and it makes everything worse. I'll step down off my soapbox now.
And we could move on to
Absolutely.
a more formal discussion of politics. I think it's interesting what is going on with President-elect Trump. And in large part, I agree with what he's been doing. Now, you can take issue with some of his appointments. Steve Bannon, for example, has an arguably white nationalist / racist past. Okay, you can take issue with that.
Jeff Sessions in the same manner.
Yes. On the other hand, he's reached out to people like Mitt Romney and Harold Ford, a Democrat.
Tulsi Gabbard out of Hawaii.
Another Democrat. He seems to be interested in having a mix of opinions surrounding him, which I think is good. And he has backtracked on many of his grander, if you wish, or more horrifying, if you prefer, proposals. For example, not going to prosecute Hillary Clinton. We're told now the wall was just a campaign device. Probably not going to build the wall. Instead of deporting millions of illegal immigrants, we're just going to deport the ones who've been convicted of crimes.
Which he counts in the millions, but is actually like 220,000.
So,
just so you know, that already exists. They already deport illegal immigrants who commit crimes.
Yes, they did. So that's not really a change. And going to keep major portions of the Affordable Care Act, which most people call Obamacare. Now, I applaud all of this. His supporters, by and large, have not gotten angry, which I think is a good thing. The one exception where I've seen some of them get angry is when he indicated yesterday that he was not going to pursue criminal charges against Hillary Clinton. Some of his supporters kind of lost their composure a little bit. But, that's okay with me. I really don't care if they're upset.
I don't either. No, the big thing that I've got from this, and I supported Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary. I did. I supported his policies. The more I looked into the man, the more I looked at the man himself, listened to him talk, listened to his proposals, and how he did things, the more it struck a chord personally for me. I think he kind of summed it up best. If President-elect Trump wants to address the numerous problems that are facing this country in a responsible and respectful manner, I have no problem giving him my support. That doesn't mean that I agree with everything that he said. It just means that this is a problem that needs to be addressed. If he's got the courage and the fortitude to make it happen, okay, I don't care who fixes it. It needs to be fixed.
Amen.
But if he goes through and tries to create a Muslim registry, like he said in his campaign trail, and some of his supporters are still touting at this point, despite the fact that his new chief of staff, Priebus, former RNC head, has said that, well, no, that's not going to happen. You know, we're going to do something different. Then he's going to find no bigger enemy in his way than me, and hopefully a lot of people like me. The biggest thing that we have as Americans is we have our vote.
That's right.
And it's not every 4 years for the federal government. It's every 2 years. And so the hope is that in the next 2 years, we don't see an implosion of this newfound Trump reasonablement. I hope that's the case. Otherwise, it's going to get really bad really fast.
Now, one thing that I've seen that I think is profoundly silly, people on the left are alleging that there was election fraud and that the differential between the exit polls and the actual vote in some of these states should be investigated and we should have recounts. The problem is that exit polls have a margin of error of about 3%.
Right.
Or actually, I should say 3 percentage points.
Right.
That's something that annoys me, and I'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, there's a margin of error of about 3 percentage points. So if it says Hillary Clinton 45, Donald Trump 42, it could really be Donald Trump 45, Hillary Clinton 42.
Right.
Okay? So anything within that is within the margin of error.
Right.
And in all of these cases, the results are within the margin of error. There's no reason for this.
I find it extremely rich that Hillary Clinton supporters will talk about exit polling and the possibility of voter irregularities when during the Democratic primary season, these same things happened against Bernie Sanders and for Hillary Clinton, and these are the same people saying, look, the votes tallied, move on.
And they threw a fit when Donald Trump said that he would wait to see if he thought that, the election results should be accepted.
Right.
It's hypocritical.
It is. Here's the one thing that we know. Donald Trump won the most electoral votes in the Electoral College. He got more than 270. He is the president-elect. He lost the popular vote by numbers that are approaching 2 million votes. That is clearly not a mandate. The problem is that you have mixed results throughout the country. Look no further than the North Carolina governor's race.
That's true.
North Carolina goes for Trump, right?
Yes.
Votes red, goes against Hillary Clinton, reversing some of the purple trends that have happened under Obama 4 and 8 years before. But they've got what looks to be a Democrat winning the governor's race. This is the same ticket, the same voting time. These people voted for Trump and a Democrat for governor. It just goes to show you that the old party politics lines are dissolving. People are upset and they want something different. They want somebody who's going to actually address problems that they see.
And I think that it demonstrated how much people disliked the Republican governor in North Carolina.
Absolutely.
Just like people look at, the last gubernatorial election here in the state of Kentucky where Matt Bevin beat Jack Conway, and they point to the fact that Allison Lundergan Grimes did much better statewide than Jack Conway did in her race for Secretary of State. Okay? So, what that really proves, it doesn't prove election fraud. What it really proves is people really disliked Jack Conway. And that's what that comes down to. But now, on to something that annoys me. Okay, it's okay for people in everyday conversation to make this mistake. But journalists make this mistake all the time, and it really annoys me. And
Please say it's a contraction.
I'm containing myself
your,
here.
and your. Two,
But
two, and two.
No. They misuse the term percent. Okay? They'll say, so-and-so won by 3%. Well, no, they didn't. They won by 3 percentage points. There's a big difference. And that really annoys me. And it reminds me of when we had a Callaway game this year, and the officials incorrectly marched off the penalty, and you said that you weren't sure if I was more offended by the fact that they couldn't do math than the fact that it hurt the Lakers.
And I think you would say that it was about a 50-50 split between your anger about them hurting the Lakers and doing the math incorrectly.
Yes, absolutely.
It's unacceptable. No,
absolutely.
I'm right there with you. When I was a kid growing up, Tim Russert was considered the toughest interview in the country. You wouldn't talk to Tim Russert on Meet the Press on Sunday, you better be ready. And it doesn't matter which party you were in. I watched him grill Democrats and make them look stupid with their assertions. What we don't have right now is we've got no tough interviews. We've got political candidates who can avoid tough interviews, and it doesn't matter.
Well, or there are some tough questions that are asked, but they tend to be silly questions. You said this stupid thing 2 months ago. What do you have to say about it now?
Right.
That's really not the kind of question they should be asking. One of the early presidential debates on the Republican side, almost every question was about something stupid one of the candidates had said, when it should have been,
what is your position on this problem?
Yes, or what do you want to do? What programs will you enact? What things will you change if you're elected? Those are actually tough questions. Asking somebody, do you regret calling Trump supporters deplorable? That's not a tough question. That's a silly question.
It is, and it absolutely has no bearing on anything. We get into the position where we argue personalities, and that's not where it needs to be. Now, there's a difference when you're talking about personalities and temperament. When you're talking about personalities, you can try to say, well, this person seemed arrogant by the way they talk down to this group. Now, that's all subjective. That is completely subjective. Anybody can read it a different way and be just as right as the person making the original assertion. When you have a temperament issue, which was one of the issues that I had with Donald Trump, this is a man he can't be criticized. If you criticize him, he just flies off the handle. Well, guess what? You're playing in big league politics. You're going to be criticized. Whenever your vice president gets a respectful question.
Do you want for a drink?
No, I'm good.
There's no hurry. I'm just doing this here.
No, you're good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
When your vice president goes to a Broadway musical and gets a respectful request, asking for inclusion, asking for a toning down of rhetoric, because there are groups of people who are genuinely afraid for their lives and livelihoods. That's not unfettered criticism. That is what you signed up for.
I agree. Now, transitioning a little bit, because there are two more things that I want to get to here. I was talking to someone this week. Okay. And it's talking about a situation where a man had been screaming at a woman and slapped her. And the child in the situation went to a closet and hid in the closet because the child was afraid.
Yeah.
And he's talking about how horrible that was for the child.
Right.
Here's the thing that troubles me. Okay? Why is it okay? Why do people think it's okay to do something to a child that would be illegal if you did it to a spouse? That doesn't make any sense to me at all. You want to talk about that child being scared? Try having someone take a belt and whip that child while they're screaming and cursing at the child.
Right.
That's terror. That's real terror. And if it's illegal to do that to your wife, it damn well ought to be illegal to do it to a child.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is residual. For a lot of people, that's how they grew up. They think that is the right way to go. They don't understand that there are better ways to do it. Here's the thing. Not only is it bad, it's ineffective.
Absolutely.
It doesn't work. It just doesn't. It's something that does not create the change that you're trying to make. And in some cases, I think we're talking about people with good intentions. Other cases, you've got bad people doing bad things. In both those situations, if you can change those situations, you have to.
And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be allowed to spank a child. I would take mine and swat them 2 or 3 times on the bottom with my hand, okay? Mm-hmm. I wasn't screaming at them or cursing them, and I did not hurt them.
Right.
I mean, they probably barely felt it through the padding, but they knew that I was unhappy and I disapproved of what
right.
they had done. And that really is all that's required for correction.
Well, and here's something that I've learned in my life, and it was something that I didn't know when I was younger. Corporal punishment doesn't work. I mean, it just never has. What it does do is it does teach kids that physical altercation is how you solve problems. And as a grown-up, we know that that's not it. I mean, that's not the way you do things. It doesn't solve any problems that way. In fact, if you're prone to getting into physical altercations, you create more problems because you're going to end up in jail. You're going to end up in court, and being accused of assault and battery and stuff of that nature. But there's not an active system to teach people what they were doing is wrong. And we were talking about this off air a little bit. Not this particular subject, but the idea that, well, it worked for my grandparents. No, it didn't. It didn't work then either. We assumed it worked. It's a whole concept with, I don't understand why we have to have seat belts. I never had a seat belt, and I turned out fine. That's called survivor bias.
Well, Kentuckians have always believed you should be able to go wherever you want, including through the windshield.
But the survivor bias says, yes. If we take a vote right now of people who survived, seatbelts had no effect on their lives. Generally speaking, the people who don't get to vote are the people who died because they didn't have a seatbelt. So this idea that, well, it worked great for my grandfather is just inherently illogical and needs to be thrown out. That doesn't mean that everything that they did was wrong, but it needs to be looked at with a critical eye for today.
Transitioning to religion.
We're hitting the light topics today, folks.
Absolutely.
Incoming text message.
Let's see here if this is important. Well, okay. It's my wife.
So it is important.
But I'm going to let it wait a few moments because I'm on a roll here.
Okay.
With regard to, there is a passage in the Bible where Jesus says, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you.
Yeah.
And goes on to say that people often stop there. Most people don't even do that.
Right. They fail at that hurdle, so they don't continue on.
Be perfect even as your Father in heaven is perfect. And if you just think about that for a minute, okay? Do good to those who hate you, love your enemies, be perfect even as your Father in heaven is perfect. It takes, if you think about it, it's not just saying that we should love our enemies and do good to those who hate us. It's saying Heavenly Father does the exact same thing.
Right.
So people who say God's going to get them for that, well, no. God's going to do good to those who hate Him, and
he's going to forgive that. I didn't get the point. I mean, that's
absolutely
the point behind it. No, You bring up a really interesting point as it comes to religion. And I don't like talking about my religion too much, but the one area that has always struck me about Christianity is, while the entire Bible is important and has value, especially for people of faith when they're looking for answers and they're trying to understand, the Bible made a crib sheet because they asked Jesus what was the most important commandment. And Jesus said, love God with all your heart and your soul, with every ounce of your being. And love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Absolutely.
That's the most important commandment. Now, I didn't say it's the most important commandment. Jesus said it was the most important commandment. So if you take it through that lens, if everything you read in the Bible is focused through the lens of love God and love your neighbor, that should be your razor of how you should act. That's how you decide.
Absolutely. And love yourself. That we leave that off too many times. I was talking to one of my friends, and several of my friends I've discussed this with. Too often, we talk to ourselves in ways we would never talk to anyone that we love.
And we wouldn't allow anyone else to talk to us
right.
that way either.
We beat ourselves down when we should really talk to ourselves the way we would someone we love.
Yeah.
We should, not that we shouldn't correct ourselves, we absolutely should, but we should do it in a loving manner.
Right. The most telling part of all of this is that whenever I see people use their religion to back up negative treatment of other people, for whatever reason, whenever I see that, when I see Christians doing that,
that's my son's ringtone.
That's all right. Military man himself. We want to thank him for his service because that's important that we do that all the time.
Absolutely.
But whenever we see people using their Christian religion to persecute someone and cause harm, that's the first thing I always think about.
I saw post on Facebook this week. I think you actually posted it.
I'm a smart guy. I do that kind of stuff.
And the headline was, the 50 individuals and groups that Jesus says it's okay to hate. And I was like, this is so twisted. And then I clicked on it. 1 through 50, every line was blank.
Absolutely.
And that's the truth, man.
That really is. You know, if there ever is a Muslim registry, I hope that the first million names are of people who the week before never would have called themselves Muslim. Because, in my opinion, that's the definition of Christianity. It's to...
I don't remember who I saw that said this, but he's Jewish. Mm-hmm. He said if there's a Muslim registry, he's signing up.
Yeah, it's actually the head of the Jewish Anti-Defamation League. I saw that as well. And it's a powerful statement. It's a statement that says, you know what? I reject this idea that because they go to a different church, they deserve to be separated and blamed. And for all of the talk of neo-Nazi support and the alt-right and the Ku Klux Klan and all that stuff, the biggest issue that I have is this idea that you pick out a scapegoat in a religion and you blame them for all your troubles. That's the longest term impact of Nazism, is the politicalization of blaming the other. And we can't do that in America.
Guess what it's time for?
What's that?
What are you going to watch? What are you looking forward to this weekend?
So, I'm going to watch Westworld, like I said last week. I'm going to watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Oh, good grief.
I'm going to watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and I'm going to do it like every other red-blooded American. I'm going to do it in a chair with my feet up, and I'm going to doze through 90% of it, because that's the American way. That's the joy of America. Oh, look, there's Snoopy, while I drool and sleep in my chair. What are you going to watch?
At 11 o'clock on Saturday morning, I'm going to be watching the University of Louisville Cardinal football team play the University of Kentucky. And
they've got a long way to go after the shellacking they got from Houston.
Well, but then again, Kentucky trailed Austin Peay 13-0.
And won 40-something to 13.
So, then Saturday night, I'm going to be at the CFSB Center watching the Racers play Alabama A&M.
A game, hopefully they can get themselves back on. You know, they've played well at home so far this season when they've been at home, which has not been much at all. Look for them to make some more consistency jumps. They're going to have to do better on defense. They're going to have to be more consistent, and they're going to have to take care of the basketball. It seems as though that this team has the ability to go on a 10-0 spurt at any given point, and then the next minute they can give up a 10-0 spurt to the other team in about 18 seconds. And that's just unacceptable if you want to win games.
That brings to a close this edition of the Improbability Inch.
Check, please.